Welcome to episode 38 of the Racing Pod and Off the Ball with John Duggan and Johnny Ward. Remember, we're here every week with analysis, race previews, tips, stories, interviews and the crack. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part is exclusively for members. So be sure to sign up by going to offtheball.com/join. This week for members, we're going to focus on Saturday's action at Newbury. So subscribe now. Johnny, how's the form?
Form is good, JD. Yeah, if you're watching in, you might see there's a bit of a nautical team behind me. I am in Tramore. I'm down for the 2 days of Tramore. I'm down for the latter 2 days of Tramore, 3-day meeting, and seaside town, obviously, cracking town to go out in. So the plan, JD, is to observe the races, give a few losers, a few winners, hopefully, and then watch Galway United and Shelbourne on LOI TV and hope that the Galwegians progress in the Cup tonight and back here tomorrow, hopefully after a swim in the morning. So life is good.
So you swam down from Dublin, did you, to Tramore?
Swam from Dublin, yeah. No, I got the train. It was a long story getting here, but I got the train down and got here nice and early. It's an evening meeting and it's a nice day down here. Good racing and we've lots to discuss.
So how did you get from, is it Waterford train station to Tramore?
Yeah, you just get a cab. Like, it's about 20 quid. It's not too bad. Like, people give out about the public transport in Ireland, and I know that the tentacles don't go as far as they did, say, 120 years ago, when basically almost every sort of town had a railway station or there was one near it. But, like, the train from Dublin Euston to Waterford today cost less than €15, arrived a minute early, and was a lovely ride. It's very comfortable working the train. The taxi from my home in Harrods Cross to the station would have cost more than that. It's a brilliant service, and fair play to the Greens for bringing in public transport cost reductions during the pandemic, and it has lasted out as well. So I get the train regularly, and it's become really popular as well. You can see, like, it's booked out all the time. Very, very busy. New trains coming in as well, and it's a great way to travel.
Yeah, for race meetings, absolutely. I would have gone down to Limerick Junction for the Tipperary race meeting there a couple of years ago, and Francis Flood trained horses around Wicklow, won a Gold Cup in the 70s, and it was around Grange Con in Wicklow, West Wicklow. And I was down there last year because I have a relative who's got a house down there, and it's like literally a one-horse town with a pub, and that's about it, and a church. And they had a railway back in the 150 years ago, whatever. So it's interesting. You say there's lots.
Just sorry, Judy. Yeah, the train. Kind of the history of the railway in Ireland isn't removed from racing, and you mentioned Limerick Junction. Thurles is a brilliant service as well. Mallow is one where you would get a regular kind of race scores, and it's actually been sad over the years to see the numbers dwindled going to the race meetings, whereas like the train, especially the train to the Curragh, they used to have the old Curragh station, and it went about 20 years ago. In my view, that has to come back. But in the old days, the horses used to go to the races often on the train, and they used to say, the great Maureen Mullins, that the train from Munavyog would wait for her if she was running a little bit late. She'd so much stature in the village, and I thoroughly believe it as well. And like, we need to get people back on railway excursions to the race course, particularly the Curragh, which, as I've mentioned before, is on the line from Cork, from Kerry, from Limerick, from Waterford, from Galway, from Dublin, and basically every part of the country can get to the Curragh handily if they bring the stop back.
You said there's lots to discuss. Where would you like to start?
I think that, for me, JD, there's only one place to start. We discussed this before we came on air, and it's this idea, of bringing in 60 race meetings for jumps, for the jumps fraternity in the start of the calendar year in 2025, which would exclude, as it is now, the top 4 trainers in the country, considering the amount of winners that they've had in the previous sort of 2 seasons, 50 or more. So that would exclude at the moment Gavin Cromwell, Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott and Henry de Bromhead. According to the Nick Luck podcast, I think it was Nick that sort of broke this early in the week, there is the threat of legal action from the 4 trainers who would be disadvantaged by this. So it's a major talking point. I don't know where you come in on it.
Yeah, over 1,500 jumps races were run in Ireland last year. We're talking about approximately 5% of races. Just want to give a couple of opposing quotes from the Racing Post. First of all, Shark Hanlon, who would be seen as a trainer who doesn't have that many horses, but is very good, obviously, at Hewick to win the King George last year. These are his quotes. I think it's a good idea. It's giving the smaller trainer a chance. It's tough on the top 4 trainers to be excluded from 60 races, but it's only 1 race per week. It's a very small percentage of the whole thing. It's a positive move from HRI. I think it could help smaller trainers trainers, attract owners, which down the road could be very important for these yards. If it works well, then they could look at increasing the number of races. And if it doesn't, they can drop it. But it's definitely worth a go. And Simon Munir, who is part owner of the horse that won the Irish Grand National in Thames Raffles, with a small trainer, Tom Gibney, and he has the green colours. You might know the dark green colours. This is his quote. "There's no doubt that this does harm the competitive nature of the sport and it penalises owners who've horses in training with the 4 affected trainers. It is punishing those trainers who've been successful and seeks to reward those that have been less successful. This is simply not how the real world operates. Everybody should strive for excellence and be able to access the entire Irish racing programme. I think people should be free to allocate horses as they wish. I'm a great believer in meritocracy. If a syndicate dreams of a Willie Mullins trained winner at a major festival, then surely its horse should be allowed to prepare and compete in all races in Ireland without restriction." In the last few days, I've been thinking about this, Johnny. I'm kind of coming around to the view that maybe can we just find another way of rewarding smaller trainers, or maybe having races with a certain band for maybe lesser talented horses that with big prize money, because there's an anti-competition kind of element to this where your people are being excluded for their success.
Yeah, it's funny, like listening to Shark and Simon Munir there. It's hard to disagree with either of them, even though they've entirely contrasting views on it. And I have a piece on this in the Business Post on Sunday, which I'm kind of currently in the middle of writing, and I speak to Ger Lyons about it, who, not surprisingly, has the view that you go out and you do your best, and the good trainers come to the top, and that's how it works. The other thing is, though, JD, there's already a programme of races. I think there are 15 races as it is, such races pretty much as this 60 would become. So the programme's already there, and we see with in the jockey fraternity as well. I was at a meeting at Clonmel there couple of months ago, or 2-3 months ago anyway, and it was entirely for jockeys who hadn't ridden, I think, 15 or more winners the previous season. So it was pointed out to me that a lot of the jockeys welcome the break. The top jockeys, they actually welcome these meetings because it gives them a break and they can go on holidays. So it's not exactly the same, but it does already exist. Now 60 races is obviously give or take 1.2 races a week, and 60 from 1,500, it's not massive, but it absolutely does affect those top trainers, and it does affect owners who, if you can imagine being Willie Mullins, and this is a very much a first world problem within a first world problem within a first world sport, where he has to fix the difficulty in spreading his horses around. One of my beliefs in terms of why Willie Mullins is so good is, like, if you wanted to pick you're playing 4-5-1 on a Sunday, and you can only pick one striker, but you've 9 out of 10 strikers in training, and basically you can pick whoever one is training the best that week. That gives you a very good chance of having a big performance Sunday. Willie Mullins is like that. I think he had 17 horses for the Neptune, for the Ballymore novice hurdle at Cheltenham the week beforehand, before that sort of last cut-off stage. So it just shows the depth that he has. So he now has to kind of tell one of his owners, maybe, and I don't want to put owners in a tier here, but maybe an owner that's not one of his main owners, but has a horse who's rated, say, 120 or 130. Listen, we can't run in that race. And that's why you see Simon Munir, who, as you rightly mentioned, has horses with Tom Gibney. That's why you see Simon Munir, who's notably a non-Irish owner who has horses in Ireland. That's why I see him coming out and say, well, this isn't good for the likes of us, and that we'll be disadvantaged by this. And you may say, well, listen, one race a week, 1.2 race a week is really nothing to these top trainers. And I agree with that. But I can also see where they're coming from. And, like, if you look at Gavin Cromwell, Willie Mullins, Henry de Bromhead, Gordon Elliott, these people did not come from a royal background or having been handed a load of money to start off. Henry de Bromhead's dad, Harry de Bromhead, trained very close to where I am here in Tramore, and he's worked his way to the top. It took Henry a while. It took him quite a while to get going, but he's gotten to the top. Gavin Cromwell came from, as far as I'm concerned, next to nothing really. He was a farrier. He's just built up his facilities, spent a lot of money on new land beside the yard this year to invest more. And Gordon Elliott, again, son of a mechanic, came from nothing in racing, and fair enough, Willie's dad was Paddy, but Willie didn't start off with massive riches either. So they've worked their way at the top, and Ger Lyons has a line in the Business Post which is basically to the effect, not everyone talking out deserves a medal.
Absolutely. And is there another way? But another thing about it is as well, Johnny, that normally there's a collegiate nature to Irish racing and trainers, and people do get on when they're not obviously in the competing each other when their racing is actually on during the day. But that it would come to this, that there's a reported threat of legal action. Surely they could have sorted all this out before it might look like it could be going to the courts and going nuclear. You would have thought that, they would have all got around a table, but it doesn't seem like that was the case at all.
Well, now it's important to point out that Ryan McGelly, at the head of the Irish Racehorse Trainers Association, came out backing this not that long ago. Now, it was subsequently announced that he's actually moving on to become involved with Ammo Racing, and he's leaving the role in the not too distant future. And I understand now that obviously the IRTA are dealing with this issue, but my understanding is that it's not that this didn't come out of the blue. Trainers were consulted on this from top to bottom. And I mean, in the sense of turkeys voting for Christmas, JD, or the opposite here, I'm sure you'll not be surprised that the vast majority of trainers are in favour of this because it will benefit them. And to be fair, the national hunt game, one industry, one ahead in one big guy, I suppose, in the industry described it as being on its knees. And an awful lot of people would agree with that. It's very, very difficult for the smaller trainers to compete. And there are lots of reasons for that. I've made this point time and time again over the last few months. It's up to the owner where the horse goes. And in my view, owners should spread their horse around, particularly if they have a lot of money, because it's good for the game. It's brilliant for the other trainers to get a horse like Tom Gibney. Intense Raffles means the world to him, and he's shown that he's well able to train. Look at Jerkeen with that horse in the flat that they got after Dermot Well. So it's not that the owners necessarily have to put all their horses with one trainer, but when the owners are investing a lot of money at the point-to-point sales or they're buying the horse from France, they're inclined to go to the top yard. And that's in a concentration at the top. The other problem, JD, is the cost of having a horse in training. And this is something I don't think is spoken about enough. If you're a national hunt type owner in Ireland, you're more and more inclined to go on the flat. We have friends in Shamrock Thoroughbreds, and the fun that they have with horses with Aidan McGuinness and now with Jack Davison, they can go to Dundalk. They basically have an option to run the horse all year round. National hunt, if you buy a horse as a young horse, you have to wait years for him or her to run. If you buy the horse as a store, it's not as long, but it's still a long time to wait. The turnover in terms of injuries is so high. Then you have to wait to get a run. You might get balloted out, and then you rock up in a maiden hurdle where Willie Mullins has a 1-7 chance. You've absolutely no chance. You have to wait to get the horse handicapped. You have to wait to get an opportunity to win. And then if you do win, you go into Navan and you're running a 25-runner handicap where the prize money is $6,500 for the winner. So you, after deductions, you might get 2 months training fees out of it. And that's if you win the race. So as an owner, you can see why the numbers are down. It's very, very difficult to compete. And because the cost is going up and up and up and prize money isn't really matching that, it's becoming less and less attractive for an owner in the national hunt game. And this is an attempt to address that.
Well put, Johnny, well put. Anything else you want to chew the fat over before we get into the previews?
There's not a lot else. This issue, I like if people kind of interacted on it, because I feel that I can see both sides of the story, but I give HRI its due here. I think it's trying to do this for absolutely the best reasons. I suppose the other thing to talk about, JD, is just the news that came through probably only over the last sort of few hours, that White Birch isn't going to run in the Juddmonte International, and it'd be interesting to see how kind of City of Troy comes out of his run the last day when he didn't set the world alight in the eclipse. I'd be just a little bit worried that we haven't seen kind of White Birch subsequent to his win at the Curragh the last day when he destroyed August Rodan and looked like a proper 4-year-old. But City of Troy is set to run the Juddmonte. White Birch obviously isn't going to go there, so that's kind of disappointing. But we'll see if he rocks up in the Champion Stakes at Leopardstown, and I'd love to see him out for the Murphys again.
Yeah, the quotes from George Murphy, the son of his father, John, and the assistant. White Birch won't be going to York. He's in great form. He's perfectly healthy, but he's had his little break and it's just coming a bit quick for him fitness-wise. He'll definitely be aimed at the Irish Champion Stakes now. The Juddmonte is just coming a bit quick. We could do with another fortnight of work under his belt. Comments to the Racing Post, White Birch. Yeah, it's just a changing landscape. Like City of Troy, probably maybe 5-10 years ago, would have gone a different route than the Juddmonte.
He would have. Like, these horses have lots of options open to them, and the mad thing is, JD, on the flat, and I'm not really sure why this has happened, because it's kind of counterintuitive with the dominance of Coolmore, but the flat is kind of maybe it's the racing programme, and Dundalk would have a lot to do with it, but the flat, relative to what I was talking about with the National Hunt, the spread of winners at the big weekends, you see it Champions Weekend, you see it Derby Weekend, it's far more spread out. And I mentioned Jerkeen having this good horse. You've John Murphy having a proper Group 1 horse here. Ger Lyons, who I quote in the piece, he has like 2 exceptional 2-year-olds this year off the top of my head. And you've all these you've good trainers like Gavin Cromwell having very good horse on the flat. It's more spread out. But I suppose at the top 3 at the moment is City of Troy. I have to say I love that race at York, and I can't wait to see him. I saw Frankel. It was the only time I saw Frankel was running that race. One of the Ger Lyons horse I mentioned, and the good 2-year-old of Aidan O'Brien's we tipped up last week, both daughters of Frankel. But City of Troy, I can't wait to see him again. But it is funny that the flat almost seems more kind of spread out in terms of the riches and National Hunt now.
Yeah, Babouche, remember that, when you subscribe to the podcast, you get our almost bonus content where we tip lots of other races, and we gave Babouche last week to win at the Curragh, and it did win. And against the odds as well, which was great to see. We're going to look at the St. Leger Trial Stakes on Saturday, Johnny. 4:35 of the Curragh. Good to firm in places is the ground condition. 1 mile 6, 6 runners. A Piece of Heaven, Absurd, Z-Band, Courageous Strike, Grosvenor Square, and Kinesiology. It seems like Grosvenor Square is the favourite, a clear second in the Curragh Cup over course and distance. That sets the standard at a Galileo. Is this horse a worthy favourite? I'm kind of maybe looking at one or two of the others. What are you?
Yeah, I mean, this is really, really compelling in the sense of what you make of Grosvenor Square, who now has a rating of 112. After that performance the last day when he was done by Tower of London, it was an extraordinary race. And if the comments are there to be believed, and this is visually what I recall of the race, give or take, 20 lengths clear, 3 furlongs out, 20 lengths clear. And this is why I love racing, and particularly flat racing. Ryan Moore is riding Tower of London. Shout out to my mate Dan MacDonald, who I gave Tower of London to win the Derby as an anti-post pick. Turned out to be a very good horse. Didn't win the Derby, sorry about that, Dan. But Tower of London has developed into a very good horse. Ryan Moore is sitting there, turning into the straight, JD. He's like, this horse, who's not a big price, is about 30 lengths clear, 20 lengths clear. What am I going to do? Waited. Got up by length of the quarter. So Tower of London here was ridden by Gavin Ryan on that occasion. I said a lot of different jockeys. Is Ryan Moore going to ride him so aggressively? I'm not sure, right? So he's taken on Absurd. And I'm also just not. Sometimes with a race like that where a horse goes so far clear, I'm wary of it. So I'm gonna just give the rest of them the benefit of the doubt. And as much as he, on that bare form alone, he should win. Absurd is rocking up here after that amazing performance under Paul Townend at Cheltenham, and A Piece of Heaven, who I know I've definitely had sympathy for his former trainer Barry Fitzgerald, that the horse has moved on, but he did love this horse. Moved to Joseph O'Brien, was well fancied in the handicap at Royal Ascot, was actually only 7th, but I think he's better than that. Definitely stepping up here in terms of easier ground. I'm willing to think the two of them couple will give the favourite a big thing to think about. So 7-1 and 3-1, JD. I'm happy to couple the two.
I'm going with Absurd. Won the Ebor last year over the distance. Hasn't run since winning, as you say, the County Hurdle at Cheltenham. Conditions are going to suit him. Is he good enough? I just sometimes feel with that race with Grosvenor Square, sometimes those races can kind of fall apart in the form book, and they can almost like be deceptively attractive. Kinesiology, lightly raced, as 2 second place finishes over 12 furlongs, so we'll appreciate the extra distance. And as an each way shout, See the Stars was the sire of the horse's dam. Make mine a double J, Johnny. So have you got one for us for the weekend for the free to air section, maybe in that race or one of the other races this weekend?
Yeah, I'll give A Piece of Heaven at the prices. I know he's a 6-year-old, and in theory he's plenty to find. I love this horse, have to say, when he was with Barry. He just keeps progressing. And I feel that the market here is probably a little bit lopsided in terms of Grosvenor Square. So A Piece of Heaven for me is a very interesting runner, and 7 or 8-1, I'll give him that.
I'm going to go for Trust Your Instinct in the Royal Whip Stakes at 4 o'clock on Saturday. The Curragh, 1 mile 2 furlongs, a Group 3. This horse in the colours of JB McManus, I think, has got an each way chance based on second in the Dubai International. Look, Continuous is the top rated horse and the odds on favourite, but maybe at an 8-1 shot to finish in the first 2 each way. Trust Your Instinct, Johnny. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, that's fair enough, and nice kind of prices in terms of if you can get involved in some sort of a double there. Not bad price at all.
Trust Your Instinct for me, 4 o'clock at the Curragh on Saturday, and Johnny going for A Piece of Heaven each way in the 4:35, the St. Leger Trial Stakes. This is the Racing Pod and Off the Ball. If you're listening to the free version of the podcast, we're leaving you here. But if you're looking for more, including our look at Saturday's action in the other races at the Curragh and at Newbury, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe and get the full podcast with all of our racing tips, insights and stories from the week's action.